Welcome to Baby Boomer Tales. My name's Jim. Nice to have you riding along today. You can find us at babyboomertales.com. Once you've reached our webpage, there are links to different places you can hear our podcast, buy our book, see all kinds of pictures from both the north central Colorado Rocky Mountains and northeast Kansas, places that I've lived most of my life. And you can buy stuff at our Boomer's General Store. Now, I need to give you a heads up on this. 2 weeks from today is Christmas, and I cannot guarantee if you buy something at our Boomer's General Store that it would reach you by Christmas at this point. I know that's 2 weeks, but there's some of the stuff I have no control over. You buy it, they make it on demand and ship it. It's not like I have a bunch of Boomer's General Store vans out there scurrying around on next day delivery like our friends at Amazon do. And I don't sell stuff through Amazon anymore, even though I used to. So as much as I'd like to sell you a Baby Boomer's Tales coffee mug, or a Grandpa t-shirt, or a Mimi Makes the Best Breakfast in the World t-shirt, or something, ball cap that says Baby Boomer Tales, or any of that stuff, I would hate for you to purchase it at this late time and not have it get there for Christmas if you're buying something for somebody for a gift. But please shop with us, really. I mean, we have some cool stuff there. It's all pretty much baby boomers theme, or grandma and grandpa theme, or grandchildren's theme, that type of deal. Enough of that. Like I said, 2 weeks until Christmas. I'm going to talk about banks today just because of an experience I had the other day at my local bank. Our unusual facts this week. The first ATM was created in 1967 in London by Barclays Bank. The first printed paper money was exchanged in 1661 by a bank in Sweden. The oldest bank still in operation is in Siena, Italy. It's been going since 1472. There's one bank in Antarctica. Wells Fargo introduced the first internet banking service in the U.S. in 1995. Until 1999, the United States prohibited banks in grocery stores. Well, like I said, I went to the bank the other day, and all I was doing was I was going to turn in some 20s for some hundreds. I had 10 $20 bills, and I wanted 2 $100 bills. Sounds easy. I literally do all my banking anymore on the internet. I don't do it by phone anymore. I don't go to the bank hardly ever. Once in a while I'll stop at an ATM and get a little cash. It used to be I'd go to the bank every day for business, and I knew everybody that worked there and everybody knew me, and it was fine. I have done business with this bank for 33 years. But anymore, I live half an hour away from the bank, and it's just not really handy. If I need anything, like if I need new checks, which I don't anymore, I don't write checks. My firewood guy takes a check, the dump takes a check, or they charge you if you use a credit card. And I had to write a check to one of the kids' fundraisers the other day. One of my grandchildren had a fundraiser. Instead of just doing it with a card, you know how you do, had to write a check. So I have 4 checks left. That might last me a couple more years. Anyway, so I go to the drive-thru, and I go right up to the one, not the one where the tube shoots up in the air and goes across the canopy and goes down into the drive-thru people that's working in that office there in the bank. So I went right up, so they push the drawer out, and I put whatever I need in, and they pull the drawer back in, and I do my business. Well, I told the guy there I never had seen him before, but that's nothing new because the few times I've been to that drive-through window anymore, I don't know anybody. But I said, I've got these 10 20s and I'd like to have two $100 bills. He takes my money, pulls the drawer in, and stands there and he says, do you have an account with us? Now that hit me kind of funny because all I'm doing is changing money. If they're worried about me counterfeiting, they have those little pencils. They, draw a line on the money to see if it's any good. And I said something to the effect of, I don't see where that's of any importance here. So he looks at me and I look at him and he said it again. And I said, you mean to tell me that just to change some 20s into a couple hundreds, I have to have an account there? He said, yes. I said, when did this start? And I don't think he answered me. So I looked at him again. He looked back at me. So I finally said, yes, I have an account with you. So then he gets on his computer and he says, what's your name? And I said something to the fact of, you're kidding, right? But I gave him my name and I said James instead of Jim, so it wouldn't throw him into a panic or something. And he started giving me my money and I said, do you know Mary? Now Mary is like one of the bosses in that bank. I know her very well, but I hadn't seen her for a while. I never go to the bank and I don't know her socially, but I knew her, saw her daily and talked to her on the phone and stuff all the time. He goes, yes, and he has this little bit of fear in his eyes. I'm not sure why. Maybe he thought I was going to report him. So I just looked at him and my meanest stare I had, and I said, will you tell her that Jim says hello? He gets this look of relief. He goes, yes, I'll tell her. And I didn't thank him or anything. I took my two $100 bills and I drove off, just about as mad as a wet hornet. I was not happy with the whole situation. But, vengeance is not mine. I wasn't going to report him. For all I know, it's some kind of law they have. And it could very possibly be a bank policy. I don't know. That bank's changed hands 3 times in the 33 years I've been going there. But I do know one thing. When I chose to go and do my business at that bank 33 years ago, there were 2 banks in that town at the time, and we had just moved to town. And I tried to do the same thing I was just doing here, change some bills for larger denominations or smaller, one of the two. And I chose that bank because they were friendlier to me at the drive-thru. And that's how I chose the bank. Because I tried to look them up to see if either one of them were no good, and I couldn't find any information. So that's how I chose them. 33 years later, and a lot of business had been transacted through that bank and me. So if that had happened to me today and I was looking for a bank, I'd have probably gone somewhere else. The only people I know that still work there are Mary and Brenda, and I don't even know if Brenda still works there because I haven't called her in a long time. It used to be if I needed checks, I'd just call Brenda and she'd get me more checks for free, not have to pay for them, which this guy probably would have charged me for checks. Oh well, everything changes, and I guess I'm changing too. Our song of the week is You Never Give Me Your Money by the Beatles. It was written by Lennon and McCartney, and it was on the Abbey Road album on side 2, and that album was released in 1969. It is part of a medley that included You Never Give Me Your Money, Golden Slumbers, and Carry That Weight. You never give me your money, you only give me your funny paper. Sounds familiar. And in the middle of negotiations, you break down. And I did not break down the other day. When I was a kid, growing up in that little town, north central Colorado, Rocky Mountains, that little town where I was born and raised, basically. I was born 27 miles up the road at the hospital, but I was raised there. Lived there till I was 38 years old, pretty much. My old hometown. Well, there was one bank in town, and it was on the corner, right across the street from the Conoco station, right there on Main Street. I know Dave's dad worked there. And Jeff and Barbara's dad, I think, was the president of that bank. Well, Dave's dad, after a few years, he opened an insurance agency and moved up the street. But that bank was the local bank. I did a lot of banking there, just like everybody that lived in town. But there were other banks in the county. There's a bank up in K-Town, and old Carl ran that one. And that's the first place I remember borrowing money, and he did it on a handshake. Now, my dad told me that Carl operated on a handshake, but probably, it might have been so long ago there were no banking regulations, but probably when I borrowed that money, I borrowed it for the first pickup truck I ever bought. And I just went in there and I told Carl what I wanted, and he gave me the cash right then and there. There is a possibility that my dad had to sign something for me, but I just was under the impression that Carl operated on handshake. Well, that's no more. You can't even change money at a bank without jumping through a bunch of hoops, right? I just proved that at one out. When I was a very young man, that old bank in my little hometown built a brand new bank right next door, and right next door was the Stone Lodge and Garage. That's where my best friend growing up, Wayne, was raised. And they tore that sucker down to make this brand new fancy bank. Well, the old bank building became a savings and loan. I've looked for pictures of that Stone Lodge. I'd like to find a picture of that. I used to have one or knew where I could see one or something. I can't find that. That was one of the most iconic buildings in the whole town, and they dozed it down for a bank. I played softball when I was a young man up in that country with a bunch of bankers. I got on that one softball team because my sister-in-law, Cindy, worked for very many years at that bank, and I think she got me going with that team. And we weren't very great, but we had a lot of fun, even when I'm playing with bankers. Well, I was very, very involved with our bank as far as loans and checking accounts and savings accounts and CDs and all that stuff. When we opened our store, we went through our bank to secure the loan. And one day, I was just going to the bank to do my afternoon deposit. I always deposited the cash and checks that we had gotten from the day before in the afternoon at the bank, and I just drove through the drive-thru. Well, I drove up, and there was a line of cars up and down Main Street like you wouldn't believe. And I sat there for quite a while, maybe half an hour, which is a long time, especially when you never had to sit behind anybody at the drive-thru. And I pulled up and I said, "What is going on here?" And the lady at the drive-thru said, "We're having a run on the bank." I looked at her like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "I really can't talk about it now. Thank you. I'll see you later, Jim." So I went next door to the savings and loan. My wife was working there, and I said, "What's going on at the bank?" She said, "They're having a run on it, and people are bringing all their money over here." So I freaked out, and I talked to the president of the savings and loan. She said, "No, just leave your money in there. Everything's insured. You're fine." Okay, well, so we didn't pull any of our money out, and I was kind of worried about it. And the very next day, our bank was closed. FDIC, I believe it was, seized that bank. It was the largest run on a bank in Colorado banking history at the time. And it kind of started the whole ball rolling that it about devastated not only Denver, but all those little mountain towns that depended upon tourism and all this stuff. That was a part of what sunk my ship up there in my little department store up there in that little town, and how I got myself in Kansas right there. Well, once I moved to Kansas, when I lived in the city part, I did have a bank. Once we moved to that little town that my daughters call their hometown, it was a bedroom community, part of the Kansas side of the Kansas City metropolitan area. That's where we found this bank that I even bank at today. I know we live half an hour away from it anymore, but I never had problem one till the other day. when some 25-year-old guy decided he was going to ask me if I had an account at that bank and what in the world was my name. I might sound like an old duffer, and my wife told me that when I was telling her this story that I had anger issues showing, and I've calmed down now, and I have found that if I talk it out on a podcast, it all makes it better for me, and so that's what I did today. I'm not going to close my account just because of some guy that probably won't be there next time I go through there. And that might not be for a year or two. It might be. Christmas is coming. But you know what I mean? It's all good. Maybe I'll call Mary. But I'm not going to do it until that thing's way in my rearview mirror. So like I tell myself all the time, and I say it almost every time I do a podcast, some way, somehow, somewhere, find it in your heart to always be kind. It's taking the high road in life and you won't regret it at all. Peace out.